to you today about the book Not So Fast, Parenting Your Teens Through the Dangers of Driving by Tim Hollister. The book was published in 2013 by Chicago Review Press and is a good read and merits the attention of parents who have learning or novice drivers in their house. Unfortunately, the book's motivation was the death of Tim Hollister's son, Reed, who was 17 at the time, in 2006, died in a car crash on an interstate in Connecticut at night after a rainstorm. And without a doubt, this is a book written from inexplicable grief and enduring pain. Purpose, as Tim Hollister says at the outset, is to help parents make decisions regarding their teens and helping them to mitigate the risks associated with learning to drive. Because for teen drivers as a group, they're at very high risk for being involved in a motor vehicle crash. The thesis of the book, however, is not what the purpose is. The thesis of the book, Mr. Hollister believes, is that tougher laws, tougher GDL programs will keep our young people safe. GDL is the Graduated Driving Licencing Program. The first one was implemented in New Zealand in 1987. After the implementation of New Zealand's GDL program, it snowballed, and by the beginning of the 21st century, most industrialized countries, most of the G20 nations, states and provinces had a GDL or a GLP program, Graduated Licensing Program, in place. These have four basic components: no alcohol, restrictions on cell phones, either handheld or hands-free cell phones, nighttime driving. Most programs are somewhere between midnight and 5 a.m. that young people can't drive. And finally, the number of passengers in the vehicle are restricted to one passenger. Oftentimes, in many GDL programs, that passenger is a family member, sibling, mom or dad, grandparents. Those immediate family members are allowed in the vehicle. But young people are restricted on the number of passengers because it is proven that if you have more than 2 passengers in the vehicle, it tends to distract the driver and lead to higher crash rates amongst young people. The book identifies 4 reasons that young people are at a higher risk of crashing. One of them is biology, that their brains do not fully mature until they're age 25, low aim steering, route planning and navigation, and hazard perception. And hazard perception I am very much in agreement with. The development of those skills and abilities takes 3 to 5 years, as Mr. Hollister states in his text. And the reason it's so difficult is because the task of driving is so dynamic, and all of the circumstances that come together, the dynamic features of our roadways come together, and in different situations can have very different repercussions for drivers. So the driving task, the driver, the vehicle, road, weather, traffic, and light, all of those things can combine in a multitude of scenarios, where in one scenario on one given day is going to be completely innocuous, on another day it is going to be lethal for drivers, and drivers have to be able to identify that and take evasive action. It covers some of the familiar ground that we have in terms of traffic safety, distracted driving, fatigue, drinking and driving, drugs, earphones, GPS, all of these things in terms of distracted driving, which has been at the forefront of traffic safety in the past decade, and really coming to the awareness of how much the risk of being involved in a traffic crash occurs when drivers are using cell phones or eating or combing their hair or doing their makeup or whatever they're doing while they're driving. So the book covers a lot of this. Some of the new stuff that the book brings to the table, which I think is really great: recreational driving. Teens that don't have a destination are at a higher risk. The hours immediately after school are also at risk. So this is some new information that he brings to the table in terms of young drivers. He also indicates that young drivers with their own access to their own vehicle not sharing a car are also at greater risk. So there is some new stuff that he brings to the table. There is also some stuff that I am not in agreement with. In the last chapter of the book, he stops just sort of advocating a police state for young people, that we should be dobbing them in. Unfortunately, this comes to a real head-on sort of collision, for lack of a better word, in terms of our culture and dobbing other people in and snitching on people. I mean, I can totally understand and be on board with his intent, but being a snitch, dobbing people in, calling teenagers parents, I see that as being really problematic and creating a lot of conflict for parents of young people and drivers and those types of things. I think there are other solutions, but I totally understand his motivation. The other part or problem I see with the book is that it ignores the larger context of driving. Driving is dangerous for all drivers, and a statistic: in the 20th century, for example, driving killed, injured, and maimed more people than soldiers sent to war in the 20th century. So we're talking the First World War, the Second World War, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, the Middle East. So the motor car, in terms of the number of lives, injuries, maimings that it claims, it's dangerous for all people. Seniors, on the other hand, also have a similar crash rate when compared on a per 100,000 kilometer rate as young people. So it's easy to take aim at young people and impose more rules, more regulations, and more criteria which they have to follow to earn a full license. Seniors, on the other hand, who have a similar crash rate, not so easy. They have enormous political clout, they know the system, and they have time and resources to combat political regulations or political moves to impose sanctions on their driving. As well, as the baby boomers are on the footstep or the doorsill of retiring, these people are in positions of power, and they're the ones looking down the road and going, well, I'm going to be retiring in a few years, I'm not going to impose sanctions on my own driving. So it's easy to heap more regulations and rules and laws on young people to get licenses, but I'm not totally convinced that that is the answer for young people in order to keep them safe. I think the relationship between parents and young people starts at a very early age. Children learn how to drive sitting in the back seat and watching us in terms of our reaction to traffic situations, our attitudes, whether we speed, we follow too close, or we fail to give the right of way, which are the top 3 reasons for traffic crashes. The relationship between parents as drivers and young people is imperative and needs to start at an early age. If this has been done, this book will augment that relationship and help you to mitigate the risks associated with teen driving. If that relationship hasn't been established since the beginning, then unfortunately this book is not going to help. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Rick with Smart Drive Test. Have a great day. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer.